Everybody, today is December 1st, so we'll be looking at November 30th MTG stocks. It's kind of a weird one. You can see like there's a lot of these mystery booster things kind of here. Some weird spikes. We'll talk about it a little bit, but let's go ahead and get into our first price increase, which is Ancient Springs, which is a 1 green sorcery, or green sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You reveal a colorless card from among them and put it into your hand. Then put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So this is, it's more for like Eldrazi, and this is when it came out, I believe, in the Eldrazi set, kind of indicated by that symbol. But it basically it's 1 mana, draw a card, potentially get some good Eldrazi's from your deck, or if worst case scenario you don't get anything, you put a land because lands are colorless, I believe. So it's an okay card. So it's kind of weird because you see that it was $2 and now it's $5. But if you look at the kind of like other versions of this thing, they have 267 or 265 from the original Eldrazi's. So it's kind of weird that this one increased, and I think it's just because these are actually kind of like selling now. People aren't exactly sure, like, are they supposed to be worth more or less? So I mean, if I would not suggest if you are a specker or anything like that to spec into this, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. If anything, the price should go down maybe slightly, in my opinion. But if you are wondering, by the way, with the mystery boosters, like, how do you indicate that they're different? Because you see this as an M25, that's kind of weird. It's just this little symbol down here that has a little planeswalker symbol. Because if you look at the originals, you can see that there is not a planeswalker symbol down on the bottom left on either the original or the actual one that it's copying from. But that's how you can indicate that if it is a mystery booster card. But kind of talking about that, we're gonna look at a couple of others. As we can see, he has gone up to $100 from $54, which is not very reasonable considering if we look down here, he's about $10. So like I said, these are very skewed prices right now, just because they're probably just being kind of released and people are trying to sell them and etc. So I'm not going to pay too much attention to their prices or their price increase, just more about the cards themselves. So we'll look at Crucifix again. This is Crucifix, God of the Horizons. This is a 3 colorless, green, blue, legendary enchantment creature god, indestructible. As long as your devotion to green and blue is less than 7, Crucifix isn't a creature. You have no maximum hand size. If unused mana would be emptied from your mana pool, that mana becomes colorless instead. And it's 4/7. That 4/7 doesn't matter that much. It's more about the abilities here, of course. And these are some pretty nice abilities. It's being in Simic is really nice because you can mana ramp with that green pretty easily. Having no hand size can potentially this makes things a little bit easier in general. But what it's really about is the you don't lose that mana after mana pulls, and you can produce some pretty stupid things, especially if like Seedborn Muse or anything that lets you untap your lands on other people's turns. Basically with Crucifix, you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to tap all my lands, and with green, maybe you have like 15 lands out or something. Maybe not that many, but let's just say 15 lands. Tap them all on your turn, then Crucifix makes it all colorless mana. Tap it on your opponent's turn, then tap it on your other opponent's turn. This is, of course, considering commander. And maybe by the beginning of your upkeep or the beginning of your turn, you now have 60 colorless mana just kind of chilling around. It's pretty spooky, especially when you have mana dump abilities or even cards that just are like, pay X, deal X damage. There's like Hurricane, for instance, will do X damage to each player and creature with flying. So it may kill you. That's like, but usually you probably want to get health up and stuff. But Crucifix is a really cool card, and if you can play around his ability, especially as the commander, I think you'll have a fun time. Let's see. Let's go ahead and go to the next one here, and this is the last mystery booster price increase that we'll look at. And it's Dragon Broodmother, which is 2 colorless, 3 red and 1 green. It is a dragon, not a legendary creature, so you can't use this as your commander. But it's a 4/4 flying. At the beginning of each upkeep, put a 1/1 red and green dragon creature token with flying and devour 2 into play. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, this is an okay card, but why is it worth? It's usually worth about $12 to $16 depending. But I was like, having triple red is pretty hard to get in general. Now, if you're doing like a dual color, it's probably not that hard, and especially with Gruul, with the green in there, Gruul can ramp pretty easily as well. So maybe it's not a huge deal for those specific colors. But I was thinking, still, regardless, this is not doing much. But then I realized, because I looked it up a little bit, that says at the beginning of each upkeep. So this is pretty much the reason why this card is so expensive is Commander, is if you have 3 opponents, you're making 3 1/1 red and green dragon creature tokens with flying and devour 2. So this allows you to either make 3 1/1s by the time it gets back to your turn. Well, I guess 4 1/1s when it hits your turn. Or you can just make a really huge creature. You can basically make, 3 1/1s when it gets to your turn. Or you can make a 6+1, 7/7 flying token, which is pretty crazy. And there's a lot of other things you can do that with that in this color. Like you can maybe fling those creatures or sacrifice it and deal damage equal to its power or whatever. So I realized that makes a lot of sense. So Dragon Broodmother is very good, especially in sacrifice decks like Gorvold or Prosh or something like that. I think those can really play off of that ability. So if you ever wonder why, it's because maybe it's very obvious, but I can't read apparently, and it's just that beginning of each upkeep. Now we're going to go into a card that is not part of the weird mystery booster pack price increase. This one is just from Throne of Eldraine, which is a Brazen Borrower. He's a 1 colorless, 2 blue. He has an adventure, which is Petty Theft, which is a 1 colorless, 1 blue instant adventure. Return target non-land permanent and opponent controls to his owner's hand. So I mean, this is a good card to have. I mean, there are literally cards, and I feel like I've talked about this before somewhere, but there's literally cards that are just pay 2 mana, return to your hand. Good stuff. But then you have the creature itself, which is a 3 mana 3/1 flash flying. So if you use the adventure, you can then at that point in time cast it any time for its flash ability, and then can only block creatures with flying. So it's basically gives you a way to block a flyer if you have a flyer that's very very much so a nuisance, or you just are like, oh, okay, well I can play this guy on his turn, bring him out, and then when it comes to my turn, I have basically a haste creature, sort of haste. But yeah, it's a very good card. I've said before, adventure cards are just have a ton of value. It's super good. But this one has increased, and this is more of the alternate art frame as well. This, as you can see, like this has that pretty frame, and so this one increased quite a bit. We can go over here. So you can see that it increased by 24%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but when you consider that how high it was, it's already it's like $10 or so. The non-showcase is like $20-ish, but yeah, it's a very good card. I don't think it was worth this much when it first came out, so it's kind of interesting to see it keep going up. I think the Throne of Eldraine cards, besides Oko, everybody knows about Oko, it seems like. But yeah, I think a lot of Throne of Eldraine cards, especially with these adventures, are going to be worth more in the future. Could be wrong. I want to spec into it yet. I've noticed, I think I've said this before as well, is that when it comes to these kind of things, if you do like to spec into things, and I don't really spec a ton. I do like I buy like a few of some card. I don't buy like hundreds or anything, but like I do it for cards that I like too. I'm not like if I don't like the card, I probably won't get into it. But like this, like if I had the money just to kind of throw around, I actually really like this card, but I don't have that kind of money to throw around, so I probably will not be buying multiple copies or any copies of this card. But regardless, if you can wait to buy cards, regardless if you just like the card or you like to potentially invest in these cards, generally these cards will go down over time. like I said, it's about 3 or 4 months, it seems like. And, so of course, now the problem with you waiting 3 or 4 months is that it's either going to go one or two ways. The card that you really want is going to go skyrocketing up and you're going to be sad, or it's going to crash down. Like if you look at War of the Sparks stuff, if you were around when War of the Sparks started, there are things that were like Chandra the Planeswalker. I think she was like $5 and now she's like 30 cents. It's just one of those things where, and, she's still in standard, so it's not like it may be standard, standard changing. Maybe that's what would affect it, but I think it's more like people are realizing what's good or not, and so you should be careful on that kind of stuff. But if you do have time to wait, I would generally wait unless you just really feel that it's like, oh, okay, this card has to go up. Like Red and 6 is one of those cards where if you really felt it was going to go up. But I mean, there are still other cards where people are like, yeah, this card has to go up, and they don't. So, just be careful on that kind of stuff, for sure. Anyways, we're going to go into our random commander of the day. This is going to be Intet, the Dreamer. This is, I guess, probably one of the kind of OG commanders in the sense of, well, the commander was kind of getting more popular around 2009. I think that's when it kind of officially started. I'm going to put quotes around that. 2008, 2009, I think. But it was so commander has the other name EDH, and if you don't know what the abbreviation is, it means Elder Dragon Highlander. And so the idea was that they wanted to use the dragons in the sense of they have a legendary creature dragon. And so this is kind of like one of those few that were an actual like Elder Dragon Highlander. Now there were some older ones, so I can't remember if Intet is one of the older ones or not, because there's one for each 3 color pretty much at this point. But there were some that were like very old, and there were some that came out a little bit later, and they pretty much all have this same kind of ability, which we'll get into here now. Which legendary creature flying. He costs 3 colorless, and he's Temur, so he's blue, red, green. He's a 6/6, and I didn't say he has flying, but when he deals combat damage to a player, you may pay 2 colorless and a blue. This is the ability that pretty much all these dragons of the 3 colors have. Whenever you deal damage or combat damage, you pay some cost and you get some sort of benefit. So in this one, so if you pay the 3 mana, you exile the top card of your library face down. You may look at it for as long as it remains exiled, and you may play that card without paying its mana cost for as long as Intet remains on the battlefield. So this is actually a really cool commander. I haven't looked a lot into them before, but like because some of the other dragons are kind of like, okay, whatever, it's fine. But this one seems actually really good. The cool thing about these colors combinations is that with red, you can draw through your deck and discard quite a bit, which discarding may not help you a lot. But with blue, you have ways to stack your deck. You like scry, or you can even just have cards that are like, look at the top 3 cards of your deck, put 2 back. The very good cantrips in general. So this allows you to draw your deck out and put stuff back on top of your deck, and then this also allows you just to put potentially really big cards in there, and the green kind of can back you up on this because with your mana ramp, so even if you can't really get Intet to stick very well with the green, you can probably mana ramp a little bit easier, which allows you to put those big cards in there, and you don't have to be too scared about if you can't get off the ability. But yeah, I think it's a really cool. I think it's probably, like I said, one of the better abilities of these dragons. I can't remember all their abilities. Maybe I'll keep going through each of their abilities at some point in time, or each dragon at some point in time. But it's I think Temur is probably one of the few colors where I don't have there's like one of the color combinations I haven't really messed with a lot. I like the color combination. It's kind of like, I don't know, for some reason it's weird to me, I guess. It's for some reason these like 3 colors, I don't know if it's like one of those things where no one likes Temur, or well, of course people like Temur, but not a lot of people like it. But yeah, I think it's a pretty cool card where you can make a really big stompy deck, and that's for sure. Or you can do some crazy other things with blue, giving you extra turns. Let's go ahead and step away from him. I think I've talked about it not enough. But we're going to keep with the Temur theme, and we're going to talk about Temur Ascendancy. This was back in the con set, and these aren't worth a lot. I think they're actually pretty good, though, if you ever were to go the route of basically any of the, I think there's like allied factions and enemy factions. I don't know how you want to call it that way, but basically on the Shards of Alara set, you have, something like Bant is green, white, blue, and it's because those three are on the color chart, or on the Magic's color chart next to each other. And then cons went kind of the opposing factions, which is more like you have one or two colors on this side and then the opposing faction on the other side. So you would have like, I don't exactly know, but in this case, let's say if green and blue's here and then red's over here, that's kind of like, that's why cons was like that. But anyways, cons has each one for these three, and these are just like very strong enchantments for these colors. So with Temur Ascendancy, it cost green, blue, red. As an enchantment, creatures control have haste, which is very nice in general. I mean, usually enchantments cost about 3 for this, for giving all your creatures haste. But then has the added benefit whenever a creature with power 4 enters the battle with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. And if we kind of go back over to Intet, that's really great because if you have Temur Ascendancy out, and then you can cast Intet, Intet comes out. He now has haste, so he can immediately use his ability if you have enough mana. And then on top of that, you get to draw a card because of this. And then if you have Intet's ability proc off and you put out another big creature, then its ability goes off again, and blah, 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 etc., etc. But yeah, I think this is actually a pretty strong enchantment in general. And I think kind of all of these ascendancies are pretty decent if you're running those 3 colors. If you're not running a creature deck, this doesn't do you well, but if in general these cards are good. Like I said, if you're not running a creature deck, not going to do you good, but in general pretty decent. And we'll kind of end the day off with our usual random cards. So random card numero uno is Call to the Netherworld. I don't know if we've done this one before or not. It seems familiar, but anyways, it's a 1 black sorcery. Return target black creature card from your graveyard to your hand, and has a madness of 0. So this just basically is a little bit of graveyard recursion, and this is better if you have ways to discard cards out of your hand, because of course the madness 0 means that if you discard it from your hand, you can then pay its madness cost, which in this case is 0, and you could then use its effect. So basically this card is a free card. It allows you to bring back a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So, I use this in my Anji deck only because I put literally every single madness card in my Anji deck. I think this card is okay, and I don't think it's gonna see like a ton of use because if you're going for a madness deck, sure, it's good. Otherwise, you need to make sure that you have a discard hand deck, which generally relates to madness, but it's kind of one of those things where I think there's better effects for 1 mana and returning a creature from your graveyard to your hand. If you have the money, there's something like Reanimation or something, which I think costs 1 black, and then you can put a creature card from your graveyard onto the battlefield, and you don't have this one says target black creature, so in Reanimation there is no limitation on color, but the does cost you life instead to put it on the battlefield, equal to its convert mana cost. But it's an okay card, but very situational. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and do our random card number 2 here. We have Wunda's Vanguard. All right, this is a rare card, so that's a little bit more interesting, hopefully. It is 4 colorless, 1 white, creature, core, knight, ally. All right, so got the allies going. It's a cohort. All right. So you tap and tap an untapped ally you control, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Okay. Allies was like a big thing for some reason. I don't know why. In the sense of they tried to get this whole, we only want allies So we're going to, or we really only want to have like this whole ally effect where you have allies and your other allies help your allies do these things. Like this one gives +1/+1 counter if you can tap another ally, or you have other things that are like all your allies get +1/+1 or etc. And it's kind of weird because when you have zombie tribal, for instance, it's usually just like give all your zombies +1/+1, or you'll have things that are like just sacrifice off a creature, then you can bring a zombie back, or something like that. But the ally ones like really, really play off ally. Like if you don't have an ally, this guy may or may not just do anything, and usually they won't do anything. Which I mean, it makes sense because the ally tag means that you're supposed to have an ally and etc. But I've kind of liked the idea of allies, but I think it's just one of those things where if you're behind, your allies deck will kind of suffer a little bit, but I'd have to experiment with it more and see how it goes. I still like the idea of it. It just seems very restrictive. Pretty much, it's kind of like the madness kind of idea. It's where it's like it's very restrictive, and you're not going to have a ton of use out of it unless you specifically do something for that one specific card. It's not good general use, but don't always have to have good general use cards. That's for sure. Anyways, I think I've rambled on long enough. I hope you all enjoyed this one, and I'll see you next time. Have a good one.